Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Wednesday, 28th May 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. Israel opened fire on a crowd of Palestinians at a Gaza food distribution site, resulting in casualties and prompting acknowledgement of a momentary loss of control by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Rescuers reported that Israeli strikes in the Gaza Strip killed at least 52 people, including 33 at a school-turned-shelter during a renewed offensive against Hamas, drawing international condemnation. In the West Bank village of Mughayyir al-Deir, an attack by Israeli settlers left 10 people hospitalized, including a 14-year-old Palestinian boy and an Israeli activist. The death of Amar Rabi, a Palestinian-American in the West Bank, has spurred anger. Families of captives held in Gaza have protested against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Attorney General Gali Baharaf Miara has stated that Prime Minister Netanyahu's nomination for Shin Bet chief is illegal. Direct contact has occurred between Israel and Syria to ease tensions. Turning to Yemen, Israel launched a second strike on Sana'a airport, targeting Houthi militants, with Houthi-affiliated media reporting that 4 strikes hit the runway and a Yemeni Airways plane. The Houthis claimed they launched 2 ballistic missiles towards Israel. Shifting to Iran, state media reported the execution of a man convicted of spying for Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continues to press for military action, wary of a diplomatic solution to curbing Iran's nuclear program. In the realm of international relations, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faces growing criticism from key allies, including the United States and Europe. Israel, Hamas, and the Trump administration have issued different messages about truce efforts. Across the Atlantic, in the United States, authorities are investigating the fatal shootings outside the Capitol Jewish Museum as hate crimes and terrorism. United States saw Donald Trump noting progress in trade talks with the EU, leading to Wall Street gains. However, Elon Musk criticized Trump's tax plans as a deficit-increasing spending bill. The U.S. administration ordered embassies to pause student visa interviews globally as it prepares social media monitoring. Natalie Phelps is facing treatment delays due to NIH cuts. Federal prosecutors will not seek the death penalty for Joaquin Guzman Lopez. Analysts are noting the resilience of China's yuan amid tariff threats. Secretary of State Marco Rubio directed embassies to halt student visa interviews and expressed distrust in Beijing's English translations. New Zealander Dylan Stansfield spotted at President Donald Trump's crypto dinner held at a U.S. golf club has been labeled an orgy of corruption. Nay, Jandan. Turning to Australia, Houthis stated that Australia should be prepared for other nations to sanction Israel. A 24-year-old Aboriginal man died in police custody in the Northern Territory after being restrained in a supermarket. David McBride lost a court bid to reduce his prison sentence. Electronic records from Erin Patterson's computer showed visits to web pages about death cap mushrooms during her murder trial. Patterson also sent texts to her mother-in-law, Gail Patterson, regarding health issues with no record of occurrence. In China, Attorney General Jeff Jackson accused WeChat of aiding cross-border money laundering that funds the U.S. fentanyl crisis. Top diplomat Marco Rubio expressed distrust in Beijing's English translations of Chinese officials' words. Meanwhile, South Korea prepares for presidential elections amid complex relationships with the U.S., China, North Korea, and Japan. Elsewhere, U.S. Sen. Tammy Duckworth is visiting Taiwan to discuss regional security and relations with the U.S. Finally, in Gaza, dozens of Palestinians were hurt during the first day of a new Gaza aid distribution plan. Philippe Lazzarini made remarks a day after a deadly incident at an aid distribution center in Rafah. China is strengthening its global ties while pushing for technological independence amid ongoing trade and geopolitical challenges. Foreign Minister Wang hosted diplomats from 11 Pacific Island nations in Syria, aiming to deepen diplomatic and trade relations. China, Gulf states, and ASEAN countries have committed to boosting trade and strengthening their partnership at a summit, focusing on closer economic integration and energy cooperation to address regional and global issues. China has extended its visa-free travel policy to Saudi Arabia, Oman, Kuwait, and Bahrain for stays of up to 30 days, starting June 9. Domestically, China is focused on industrial upgrades and addressing economic challenges. An 18-point plan aims to upgrade China's information technology, IT manufacturing, targeting self-sufficiency in technologies like semiconductors and AI by 2027. China Chengtong Holdings Group Limited has allocated $83 to digital economy ETFs, focusing on the digital transformation of state-owned enterprises. Chongqing Chang'an Automobile Company Limited's chairman anticipates a merger with another state-owned carmaker as the industry shifts to electric vehicles. Stout. China has patented a next-generation self-cooling turbine blade for jet engines, promising improved heat resistance for both military and civilian aircraft. Industrial profits showed growth in April, and Xinjiang is aiming for a 1 trillion yuan tourism revenue. However, a survey indicates a decline in optimism among European companies regarding their prospects in China, due to a faltering economy and increasing geopolitical tensions. Investigations are ongoing into a chemical plant explosion at Jiaomi Yudao Chemical in Weifang, Shandong Province, resulting in at least 5 deaths and 19 injuries. 6 people remain missing, with local officials yet to release air quality test results. Chinese customs authorities have apprehended smugglers of Pop Mart toys, such as the Labu and Molly series, due to escalating prices, confiscating 318 toys at Changsha Huanghua International Airport. In technological advancements, Chinese scientists claim to have resolved a flaw in Elon Musk's Hyperloop concept, potentially improving vacuum tube maglev technology, and humanoid robots are participating in sports competitions to further their development, including a kickboxing contest in Hangzhou featuring Unite Tree gun robots. China conducted research near the remote atoll of Okinatori in the Philippine Sea. According to Japan, turning to the United States, trade policies, particularly tariffs imposed during the Trump administration, continue to have far-reaching effects. These tariffs have led to a surge in trade crime, with companies like Charlotte Pipe and Foundry winning cases against China due to high duties on Chinese products. A 90-day pause on triple-digit U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods has created uncertainty for exporters and importers, with factory owners reporting overall order decreases. Former Trump administration officials argued in court that tariffs pushed China to negotiate and helped halt the India-Pakistan conflict. Diplomatic observers suggest Donald Trump's potential shakeup of the U.S. National Security Council could introduce greater unpredictability in Washington's approach to China. Shifting to Europe, the European Union and the Czech Republic have accused a group linked to China's Ministry of State Security of a malicious cyber campaign targeting the Czech Foreign Ministry, starting in 2022. Semiconductor representatives from China and Europe convened in Beijing to explore deeper collaboration and enhance supply chain resilience amidst tech restrictions. However, a survey indicates that European businesses' optimism about growth and profitability in China has reached a record low, attributed to economic downturns and geopolitical tensions. Finally, in Southeast Asia, Gulf states, China, and ASEAN countries have pledged to promote trade and enhance their partnership at a summit. Satvinder Singh, Deputy Secretary General of the ASEAN Economic Community, has stated that tensions in the South China Sea will not impede the growth of Southeast Asia's blue economy. Ukraine remains at the center of international attention amid ongoing conflict. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy engaged in discussions with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz in Berlin, focusing on bolstering military assistance. This marks their third meeting since Merz assumed office. These talks followed indications from the German Chancellor that allies are easing restrictions on the range of weapons provided to Kyiv. Concurrently, Turkey's foreign minister is scheduled to visit Kyiv to discuss ongoing peace negotiations. Russia reported a drone attack resulting in temporary closures at Moscow's Vnukovo and Zhukovsky airports. Reacting to these events, former U.S. President Donald Trump voiced dismay at stalled ceasefire negotiations, labeling Russian President Vladimir Putin as absolutely crazy following the drone incident. GOP senators are increasingly advocating for sanctions against Russia due to its aggression against Ukraine, a stance that contrasts with Trump's perceived detached approach. The UK government is under examination regarding its policy consistency towards Israel. This comes after the Labour Party authorised its trade envoy, Lord Austin, to strengthen commercial ties with Israel soon after the Foreign Secretary paused discussions on a further trade agreement. Domestically, grocery price inflation has climbed to 4.1% in the last month. The government's initiative for early prisoner release, intended to ease prison overcrowding, has been met with criticism from Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley, who cautioned about the increased workload for the police. A housing minister stated that the prior government left the prison system in a state of criminal neglect. In other developments, the liberal and reform traditions in the UK have united to create progressive Judaism, co-led by Charlie Baginski and Rabbi Josh Levy, with an emphasis on inclusivity. Finally, under an agreement made on May 22nd, the UK retains a 99-year lease on the UK VS military base on Diego Garcia, the largest of the island. Shine, the online fast fashion retailer, is reportedly considering a listing on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. This potential move arises as the company encounters difficulties in obtaining approval from Chinese regulators for a flotation in London. France is currently navigating a complex landscape encompassing legal reforms, domestic security challenges, and international collaborations. The lower house of Parliament recently passed a Right to Die bill, a move celebrated by President Emmanuel Macron. A French court is poised to sentence former surgeon Joël Lescaouanec to 20 years imprisonment for the sexual abuse of hundreds of patients, mainly children under 15. Authorities in France have also disrupted kidnapping plots targeting cryptocurrency entrepreneurs, arresting more than 20 people involved. Turning to India, a team led by Ravi Shankar Prasad concluded a visit to Paris, emphasizing the need for collaboration between democratic nations like France and India to combat terrorism originating from Pakistan. Meanwhile, in the European theater, French Europe Minister Benjamin Haddad hailed SAFE as a significant stride toward bolstering European preference, diminishing dependencies, and investing in the continent's strategic autonomy, including reducing reliance on the United States. Shifting focus to Indonesia, President Macron concluded a week-long trip to Southeast Asia, seeking closer regional ties amid global uncertainties, and met with his Indonesian counterpart. Moving to Saudi Arabia, French officials are jointly preparing for a United Nations conference on desertification, slated to take place from June 17-20. President Macron has also responded to a controversial video depicting him and his wife, dismissing it as a joke and alleging that Russian accounts used it as a disinformation tactic to damage his reputation. Japan is bolstering its technological and economic sectors through strategic initiatives and facing economic challenges. The government is providing $3 billion in subsidies to AI chip startup Edge Cortex to develop energy-efficient AI chiplets by 2027, aiming to strengthen its defense technology. A weak 40-year bond sale, which pushed the 40-year yield to 3.335%, is pressuring Japan to adjust its bond issuance strategy to protect its economy from potential tariffs, particularly from the United States. Japan plans to allocate $6 billion as consumers are already dealing with rising prices and government debt. Nissan is facing renewed financial difficulties, contemplating factory closures within Japan and planning to reduce its workforce by 20,000 jobs. In other developments, Japan is preparing for the 2025 Osaka Expo, which has already attracted 5 million visitors in its initial 6 weeks, with participation from over 160 countries and organizations. Japan is also advancing its space program, with reusable rocket startup ISC planning a U.S. test launch in December for its Asuka-1 launcher, aiming for a 100-meter flight and landing test. Japan is also focused on regulatory and disaster preparedness measures. The country enacted a bill to promote AI development while addressing associated risks, including provisions for the government to disclose malicious businesses using AI. Furthermore, legislation was enacted to strengthen disaster preparedness, drawing from the experiences of the Noto Peninsula earthquake in January 2024. In an unusual move, Japan intends to use slightly radioactive soil from Fukushima on flower beds outside Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba's office. The Education Ministry has also urged Japanese universities to support students facing enrollment obstacles at Harvard due to the White House's policies on foreign enrollments. A new scheme promoting direct sales contracts is seeing retailers seeking over half of Japan's stockpiled rice. Turning to China, activities near the Pacific atoll of Okinatori were reported by Japan, who stated China conducted research in the area. China claims Okinatori does not constitute an island. Germany has increased military spending and activated a tank brigade based in Lithuania. This action reinforces NATO's eastern flank amid rising alarms about the threat from Russia. Chancellor Friedrich Merz attended the inauguration of the German brigade in Vilnius, Lithuania. In Berlin, Merz met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, who warned that Russia had amassed 50,000 troops in the Sumy region, indicating a planned offensive. Merz is expected to unveil new aid plans for Ukraine, with discussions focusing on military assistance, potentially including Taurus cruise missiles. Separately, a German appeals court dismissed a climate lawsuit filed by a Peruvian farmer against the energy giant RW, arguing that his home was threatened by glacial flood due to RW's emissions. However, the court noted that companies may still be obligated to take preventative measures. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy met with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz in Berlin to discuss military aid, including potential provision of Taurus cruise missiles. Zelenskyy warned that Russia has amassed 50,000 troops in the Sumy region, anticipating a planned offensive. Russia has reportedly amassed 50,000 troops in the Sumy region, according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, potentially signaling a planned offensive. Canada's Parliament was recently addressed by King Charles III, who, as head of state, delivered a speech widely interpreted as a subtle rebuke to U.S. President Donald Trump. His Majesty underscored Canada's independence, affirming that the true North is indeed strong and free. He also cautioned about navigating a dangerous and uncertain world, asserting that Canada faces a critical moment These remarks come against the backdrop of Trump's provocative statements, including a claim that Canada owes $61 billion for the Golden Dome, or will become the 51st state. The United States is contemplating social media checks for all international students applying for visas. Shifting focus, a British think tank has weighed in on the possibility of a Chinese military operation against Taiwan. The assessment suggests that an attack by the People's Liberation Army on Taiwan is unlikely in the near future. However, the report cautions that such an event is not impossible, particularly given the risk of misunderstandings with the United States. The think tank specifically pointed to potential miscommunication during the Trump administration. In other news, new direct flights from the United States are anticipated to boost tourism to a nation not traditionally known as a major tourist destination. Meanwhile, Venezuela is now home to Jessica Rojas, a mother who sought refuge there with her 2 children. They fled the United States, afraid of losing her children to Child Protective Services. After a sea voyage, they are now in Puerto Baldia, located at the edge of the treacherous Darien Gap. Southeast Asian countries are worried about the impact of U.S. tariffs on their economies. China is pushing for a new economic alliance with Southeast Asia and the Middle East. This alliance is seen as a response to U.S. protectionism. Some analysts suggest it could become an Asian Union. Premier Li Qiang attended the launch of a new forum. The forum connects leaders from China, ASEAN, and the GCC. Several Asian countries are increasing military spending and research. This reflects concerns about regional security. Turning to Greece, a dispute is brewing in Monemvasia. Residents disagree about a proposed cable car project. The cable car would serve the medieval fortress town. Opponents fear it could harm the town's unique character. India faces escalating tensions with Pakistan, particularly concerning the Kashmir region, due to a lack of informal diplomacy. Domestically, India is grappling with contentious legal and security issues. The Indian government is cracking down on Chinese surveillance cameras, citing security concerns and denying manufacturers' requests for delayed implementation. An Indian court's decision permitting a man accused of raping a minor to marry his victim has sparked public outrage and renewed debate regarding the rights of rape victims. A video diary documenting Ridza's experience in Indian-administered Kashmir was also produced for Al Jazeera. Turning to the United States, federal prosecutors have recommended lengthy prison sentences for 2 individuals involved in a human smuggling operation. The operation resulted in the death of an Indian family on the U.S.-Canada border. Harsh Kumar Ramanlal Patel faces nearly 20 years in prison, while Steve Anthony Shand faces nearly 11 years. Nigeria is grappling with escalating violence as coordinated attacks by suspected Fulani cattle herders claimed the lives of at least 42 to 44 individuals in Benue State. These attacks targeted 4 communities within the Gwer West local government area, according to Chairman Olmentosa Victor. The incidents are part of a continuing pattern of deadly conflicts between Fulani herders and local farmers, though the precise reasons for this latest surge in violence are still under investigation. Indonesia's relationship with France deepened as President Emmanuel Macron visited Jakarta that year. Prabowo Subianto, Indonesia's president, suggested recognizing Israel if Israel recognizes a Palestinian state. The nickel rush, fueled by stainless steel demand, has negatively impacted an Indonesian tribe, with a video showing members begging for food. Meanwhile, families of the 2018 Lion Air crash victims criticized a proposed deal between Boeing and the U.S. Department of Justice, calling it corporate impunity. Poland's Kristi Noem endorsed Karol Nawrocki for president at CPAC Warsaw, pointedly criticizing his unnamed opponent. China is presenting challenges for European businesses. Weak economic demand, coupled with restrictive government regulations, are the primary causes. These factors make operating in the Chinese market increasingly difficult for foreign companies. European Union regulators are facing an unexpected challenge from the crypto sector. New cryptocurrency regulations are believed to be inadvertently fueling a rise in kidnappings targeting crypto executives. Crypto firms are now calling for enhanced security measures. They also seek potential revisions to the regulations. French crypto chiefs are notably increasing their security protocols in response to these threats. Malaysia is currently facing political turbulence as 2 ministers have resigned from Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's cabinet amidst allegations of nepotism linked to the growing influence of his daughter, Nurul Izzah Anwar, within the government. Simultaneously, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's claim of legal immunity in a civil lawsuit has drawn comparisons to former US President Donald Trump, raising concerns about potential avoidance of accountability. And on the economic front, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim is urging ASEAN countries to resist competitive tariff reductions when negotiating trade agreements with the United States, pushing for a more cohesive and collaborative regional strategy. Argentina faces scrutiny from Amnesty International, which alleges the nation is becoming a testing ground for dismantling abortion rights. This claim stems from government actions such as reducing funding for contraception and halting the distribution of abortion pills. Adding to the controversy, President Javier Milei's administration has officially confirmed its plan to withdraw Argentina from the World Health Organization, WHO, a decision first declared in February. This withdrawal happened at the same time as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. visited Buenos Aires. Brazil is facing scrutiny as prosecutors file a lawsuit against Brewed, the Chinese electric vehicle manufacturer, for $257 million. Brazilian Real, $50 million. USD over alleged slave-like labor conditions affecting 220 Chinese workers. In other news from Brazil, airline Azul is reportedly preparing to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Spain is taking steps to address environmental pollution, with new legislation targeting wet wipes and plastic balloons. Tragically, a boat capsized near the Canary Islands, claiming the lives of 4 female migrants. While Spain is sometimes seen as a safe place for fugitives, authorities emphasize that it is difficult to avoid the law. Turning to France, President Emmanuel Macron's government faces ongoing scrutiny over its handling of recent riots. The French Parliament is debating a bill aimed at expediting the reconstruction of Notre Dame Cathedral, aiming for completion by 2024. France is also grappling with rising inflation, impacting household budgets across the country. Across the Atlantic, in Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced new measures to combat online hate speech. Canada is also experiencing a surge in wildfires, prompting evacuation orders in several provinces. Furthermore, discussions are underway regarding potential reforms to Canada's healthcare system to address long wait times and improve access to care. In the latest from Australia, the government is considering stricter regulations on social media platforms to protect children online. Australia is also working to strengthen its cybersecurity defences in response to increasing threats. Economically, Australia is navigating the challenges of rising interest rates and global economic uncertainty. Poland's presidential election is heading for a runoff, pitting Rafał Trzaskowski against Karol Nawrocki. Adding to the political fervour, the Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC, recently convened in Poland for the first time. At the conference, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem encouraged Polish voters to choose a candidate who shares values with Donald Trump. Nationalist presidential candidate Karol Nawrocki, speaking at the same conference, asserted that Europe is facing a crisis and requires Poland to lead the way to revitalization. Thailand is grappling with an environmental crisis as the Kok River turns orange, contaminated by arsenic from mines across the border in Myanmar. The heavy metal pollution is raising alarms about a potential ecological catastrophe. Bangkok is seeking diplomatic channels, requesting discussions with Myanmar's ruling junta to find a solution to the toxic sediment flowing downstream. Adding to regional tensions, Thai and Cambodian troops were involved in a brief but deadly clash along a contested border region. The unfortunate incident resulted in the death of one Cambodian soldier, stemming from what appears to be a misunderstanding between the forces. South Africa mourns the loss of Presley Chuniage, the celebrated actor who starred in the Oscar-winning film Insotsing. His talent agency, Melee, confirmed his death at the age of 40, lauding him as one of the nation's most gifted and beloved performers. Colombia has seen former soldiers implicated in grave human rights violations during the guerrilla war, now actively participating in the search for and recovery of civilian remains. These ex-soldiers are providing crucial information that helps locate clandestine grave sites, contributing to the process of identifying victims of the conflict. Shifting focus to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is facing increasing pressure to address rising inflation rates. The opposition party is criticizing the government's fiscal policies, arguing they are contributing to the problem. Trudeau defended his government's approach, highlighting investments in social programs and infrastructure. Meanwhile, in the United States, the debate over gun control legislation continues, following recent mass shootings. President Biden is urging Congress to pass stricter laws, including universal background checks. However, Republican opposition remains strong, citing Second Amendment rights. Turning to developments in France, President Emmanuel Macron is dealing with ongoing protests over pension reforms. Unions are planning further strikes, demanding the government reverse its decision to raise the retirement age. Macron insists the reforms are necessary to ensure the long-term sustainability of the pension system. In the latest from Australia, the government is increasing its efforts to combat climate change. New policies are being implemented to reduce carbon emissions and promote renewable energy sources. The measures aim to meet the country's international commitments under the Paris Agreement. In other news, tensions are rising between Russia and Ukraine, with increased military activity reported along the border. International observers are calling for de-escalation and a diplomatic resolution to the conflict. Both countries are trading accusations of aggression. Lastly, China is expanding its economic influence in Southeast Asia through new trade agreements and infrastructure projects. This is raising concerns among some countries about China's growing power in the region. The United States is seeking to counter China's influence through its own economic initiatives. Vietnam is currently grappling with substantial tariffs imposed by the Trump administration, creating economic challenges. Adding to the complexities, a luxury golf resort with ties to us, President Donald Trump's family, has reportedly received preferential treatment from Hanoi, raising ethical questions. Meanwhile, during a diplomatic visit, French President Emmanuel Macron experienced an awkward moment on the tarmac in Vietnam, seemingly being nudged by his wife Brigitte as he prepared to exit his aircraft. The return of two friends, Hall's paintings, marks a cultural homecoming for the Netherlands. These masterpieces, by the Dutch Golden Age master, had been held in private collections abroad for over a century. They are now set to be displayed for the public in the Netherlands. Tomiyo Yamada concluded her tour of the Osaka Expo pavilions with a visit to the Netherlands pavilion. This completed her ambitious goal of seeing every exhibit at the international event. The Netherlands pavilion was her final stop. In the Philippines, Arnolfo Teves J. Ana, a former lawmaker accused of a political assassination, was apprehended in East Timor. This arrest underscores East Timor's dedication to resolving an extradition issue with the Philippines as it pursues ASEAN membership. Meanwhile, in Bangladesh, supporters of ex-Premier Khaleda Zia gathered in Dhaka, demanding a general election in December amidst growing discontent with the interim government. Recent clashes with India have elevated the military standing in Pakistan, potentially strengthening rivals of Imran Khan and complicating his release from jail. ASEAN leaders have expressed deep concern regarding the violence and humanitarian crisis in Myanmar, without enacting further measures against the junta. The Pacific Mini-Games are currently underway in Palau, with 24 countries represented and athletes competing across 12 sports. Papua New Guinea is set to reintroduce shortwave radio, though the specifics are still being finalized by the state broadcaster. The Solomon Islands has secured a position on the WHO Executive Board, nominated by the Western Pacific Regional Office. Turning to Africa, a UN panel has declared that the British-Egyptian human rights activist and writer Alaa Abd El Fattah is being illegally detained by the Egyptian government. His mother, Laila Soueif, is staging a hunger strike in protest of his imprisonment. Accused of treason, former president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Joseph Kabila, has returned to the country, arriving in Goma, a city controlled by the M23 militia, potentially shielding him from prosecution. During the Trump administration, the Supreme Court was approached to approve the deportation of migrants to South Sudan, a strategy potentially designed to deter immigration through fear. This followed a flight of 8 men deported to Djibouti. In Zimbabwe, a radio levy has been mandated for motorists by the president, requiring them to obtain a radio permit to license and insure their vehicles. Focusing on the Americas, Panama has assured India of its support in the war against terror. In Haiti, the government has enlisted Blackwater founder Eric Prince to combat criminal gangs. Across the Atlantic in Europe, visitors are causing damage to the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland by wedging coins into the basalt columns. The resulting rust corrodes the World Heritage Site. In Slovenia, a woman is in critical condition after a bear attack in a forested area near Ljubljana. Meanwhile, in Nelson, New Zealand, a woman is protesting a controversial flag art installation by vowing to pick it up off the floor every day, sparking widespread public debate. Finally, in the realm of technology and finance, Ant International believes its time series Transformer TAFX model could revolutionize financial services, rivaling the impact of OpenAI's GPT in the broader business landscape. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.